An unexpected request that altered my relationship forever. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. My godmother, who mocked paper pushers, whispered, "Make this disappear." That's how tonight begins, in the vestibule outside the university boardroom, her perfume like sugared lilies in fear. I'm Jade, 31, the city's least glamorous kind of public servant, a records clerk who stamps, scans, and keeps the skeletons labeled. The job is quiet, but the paper tells the truth when people don't. If I fix what Marla wants, I risk my badge, my pension, and the part of myself that sleeps at night. "You have access," she says, voice velvet. It's a clerical correction. My hands stay in my pockets so she can't see them shake. "What am I correcting?" I ask. "A permit date," she says. "A typo. I've seen typos with fingerprints." She leans in. "Do it for family and for Theo's program." That line is a scalpel. My brother's arts nonprofit depends on her grants. "The audit is routine," I say, stalling. "Routine audits don't send emails at 2 a.m., she answers, smiling too carefully. I hear the boardroom door click. Laughter spills out. "Jade," she whispers, "you know how fragile reputations are." I do. That's why I keep records. I also know if I refuse, I'll be exiled again from a family I only rent. "Text me when you've fixed it," she says, squeezing my arm with expensive nails. Tonight, I step into the hallway, exhale, and open my phone to our database, staring at a date that suddenly looks like a detonator. Something is already counting down in the dark behind her eyes. I click the file and see a second, hidden history blinking like a warning. Growing up, people called Marla a savior, scholarships, food drives, a smile that landed magazine covers. She was also the woman who'd pat my head and say, "Some of us dream, some of us file." She wore silk sarcasm like a scarf. I learned to be quiet and accurate because accuracy was armor. When I took the clerk job, she laughed at Thanksgiving. "City clerks," she told the table, "are crossing guards for paper." Theo squeezed my knee under the table, a wordless apology, because his arts program had just received another lifeline from her philanthropy. I swallowed pride with sweet potatoes. Last week, I ran into her outside the cafe where I pick up shifts. She looked at my apron, then her watch. "2 jobs," she said brightly. "Ambition looks different on everyone." I joked it kept the lights on. She replied, "There are faster ways to climb." "Like what?" I asked. "Friends in higher places," she said, letting the words float, then added, "if you knew how to use them." Back then, I shrugged it off. Now, remembering that smile, it feels like foreshadowing whispered through a straw. In our neighborhood, success is a costume. Some people forget it's rented. I never could. My mother used to say, "We don't owe anyone our integrity, not even kindness dressed as charity." I wanted to believe that, but the rent reminder on my phone is louder than aphorisms. Tonight, Marla's typo request arrives on top of that old contempt like a threat wrapped in gift paper. On my lock screen, a new email arrives with a subject line that tastes like metal. The subject reads, "Grant disbursement hold. Immediate clarification required." It's been forwarded 3 times, headers torturing the truth. The memo mentions a community outreach grant routed through Bright Harbor Initiative, a nonprofit I've never seen in our registry. My job isn't grant oversight, but I know where public filings live. I search our database. Bright Harbor exists, but the EIN points to a different name 6 months ago. The paperwork reflects a midnight amendment with a timestamp that's a minute after our office closed. I feel my scalp prickle. Probably a backlog quirk, I tell myself. Still, in the cafe later, I watch a vendor fight with a manager over delayed payment. "Been 3 months, he says, and your dean signed off." He shows an invoice stamped, "pending audit." My heart nudges my ribs. I text Theo, "Everything okay with your funding?" He replies, "Yeah? Why?" I type and delete 3 times. At home, I open the city's procurement log, a beige labyrinth. There, threaded like fishing line, cash advances approved to vendors that share a mailing address with Bright Harbor's treasurer. The red flag becomes a red banner. I tell myself it could be messy but harmless. Nonprofits swap names, treasurers move. But at 1:47 a.m., a whispery voicemail lands. A woman says, "They'll fix the dates like they fixed the permits." Then she hangs up. I replay it, counting her breaths. This isn't backlog. This is choreography. Then my browser freezes on a lean notice quietly filed against Marla's favorite donor consortium. The gala is a chandelier-lit fever dream. Marla commands the stage, raising a glass to accountability and impact, spotlight catching her pearls like tiny moons. I'm working coat check because a coworker called out. She passes me without seeing me, or maybe while seeing me too well. After her speech, a trustee asks what I do. Before I can answer, Marla laughs. Jade keeps paper warm until real work arrives. The table chuckles. Heat crawls up my neck. I stuff my hands into the velvet pile of coats and fold back tears with receipts. When I duck outside for air, my phone buzzes. A new email from TwistoryBox at Bright Harbor. Org. With a single line. Confirm permit date. 09/18/ Must read September 8th. No signature, but the metadata shows the sender using a university IP. 10 minutes later, a board member's husband mutters near the valet. Audits paused until Monday, and his wife hushes him. I text Mrs. Ruiz, my neighbor, because she never panics. She writes, never fix a date without a supporting notice. Paper talks. I walk back inside. Marla corners me with a smile sweet as poison. Did you handle the typo? She purrs. Not my jurisdiction. I say light. Her smile strains. You always were small, she says softly. And small people follow rules. I swallow the insult like a pill. I sleep fine, I reply. The chandelier flickers as if the room blinked. When the light's steady, Marla's face is a portrait with a crack running through it. By morning, my cafe schedule shows hours reduced. The manager shrugs. Budget, he says, eyes apologizing behind corporate scripts. At the records office, an anonymous complaint lands about my conduct at public events. It reads like someone mistook breathing for sedition. I call Theo. He answers from his studio, paint splattered and thrilled about a student showcase. Don't rock boats, he says finally, when I tell him about the email. Marla's done too much good. I bite my tongue. And what have you done? He adds, instantly sorry. I didn't mean. Jade, I'm stressed. After we hang up, I knock on Mrs. Ruiz's door. Her apartment smells like lemon oil and old paper. Always bring a notebook, she says, handing me one with a green cover. Write times, names, places. She listens to my story without blinking, then says, if someone asks for a small fix, they're hiding a big problem. I copy the voicemail, the fake permit date request, the gala insult. The page looks like a chessboard, pieces sliding. At dusk, a letter from the university appears in my mailbox inviting community partners to a closed meeting next week. I wasn't invited yesterday, now I am. The envelope feels too heavy for paper. Exile wears many outfits. Today it's fewer cafe hours and suddenly polite invitations. When I check my bank app, a $0. 00 test. Transaction pings from a name I don't recognize. The test transaction's descriptor. BH Harbor Escrow. I call the number. It routes to a deadline. At work, I search filings again. Bright Harbor's certificate lists an EIN that, when I run it through our cross-reference, belongs also to Sunbridge Ed Services, closed last year after a merger. Duplicate EINs aren't a cute coincidence. I trace the permit that allegedly needs a date corrected. The PDF's properties show the timestamp edited 2 days after my office hours, from a computer with a host name matching the university facilities department. I whisper, who has that access? And answer myself, not me. My inbox coughs out a burner email. Subject, clarify quickly, asking me to backdate a notary log. The sender uses a Proton address with a handle that includes Marla's favorite quote. Good trouble. My bones go cold. I forward it to my personal account, then print 2 copies for my notebook. Mrs. Ruiz circles the Proton handle with her pen. People recycle slogans, she says, and they recycle scams. She shows me how to screenshot headers, how to note milliseconds on logs. You'd make a terrifying auditor, I tell her. She smiles. I decide to stop pretending this is defensible confusion. I will investigate, quietly, before anyone drafts me as the scapegoat. That night, someone slips a folded note under my door with 5 words that flip my stomach. The note reads, check vendor 00483. Ask why. I start at the bank branch on Maple where city deposits land. I can't see private accounts, but I can verify cashier's checks tied to public disbursements. A teller, nervous, kind, confirms that multiple advances to vendor 00483 were redeemed by a woman presenting IDs with mismatched addresses. You didn't hear that, she whispers. At lunch, I pull procurement logs. Vendor 00483 shares AP. Oh, box with a consulting firm registered last month. I call a former assistant of Marla's who left abruptly. Off record, she says. Marla hates email trails. She uses voice memos. Look for transcriptions. She pauses. And if you see the name L. Caro, that's the fixer. Back at my desk, I compare timestamps across permit edits, grant memos, and voicemail times. The pattern is a heartbeat, late-night pulses right before wire cutoffs. I color code entries, watch the page become a crime scene. Theo texts. Marla says haters are circulating rumors. Don't engage. I ask, who's L. Caro? He replies, no clue. Chill. Then he adds, please don't jeopardize the showcase. As if the truth could be scheduled around a performance. In my notebook, I draw a line from Bright Harbor to Sunbridge to vendor 00483 to L. Caro. The arrows keep multiplying. When I finally search L. Caro, a familiar face appears with a different name. The face belongs to a woman I've seen pouring wine at Marla's salon gatherings, Lila Caraway, event consultant. On LinkedIn, she's a ghost. On vendor records, she's everywhere, billing strategy fees. I dig into building permits tied to Marla's campus expansion. One approval references a community impact workshop hosted by Bright Harbor at a location that doesn't exist. I call the listed number. It connects to a voicemail offering scholarship assistance, then asks for bank details. My hand shakes as I note the date. It's the same week Theo's program received an emergency disbursement. I realize what is hidden. Dummy nonprofits laundering tuition kickbacks, permits greased by fake community events, vendors siphoning cash through advances. But I still don't know why Marla spun this web. Debt, ambition, or keeping a rival quiet. The immediate risk is clearer. If funds are frozen, Theo's rent on his studio lapses in 13 days. Mrs. Ruiz says, knowing what without why is enough to act. She pushes a teacup toward me. Document first, motive later. I nod, suddenly furious at the way kindness was weaponized. I print bank stubs, copy headers, and photograph the mailbox where vendor 00483 collects checks. The pattern stops being abstract. It's a map of harm with my brother standing on a fault line. Then my phone rings, and Marla's voice says my full name like a summons. Jade Elaine, Marla says, satin over steel. Walk with me tomorrow, 9 a.m. I don't answer. Instead, I call Attorney Park, a calm voice recommended by Mrs. Ruiz. Bring copies, not originals, he says. List every access boundary you didn't cross. We meet after hours in his quiet office. I slide over the binder I built, screenshots with captured hashes, printed emails with full headers, timestamps circled, vendor chains mapped, notarized statements from the ex-assistant and the teller who agreed to a written summary. You documented cleanly, Park says. Your exposure is low if you don't alter anything. Low isn't zero. I draft two paths. Confront first to offer a lawful correction, or report first to insulate myself. Confronting risks being spun as blackmail. Reporting risks Theo's program collapsing before a plan is in place. Mrs. Ruiz taps the page. Offer a narrow, ethical fix publicly, she suggests, in front of a witness. If it's refused, report in the same breath. Park nods. And invite a stakeholder who believes in Marla, he adds. So the moment isn't dismissed as vendetta. I hate the thought, but I know the name, Theo. My chest tightens. I text him. I need you at a meeting Friday. Please. He replies, if this is drama, I'm out. I type back the time and place, then stare until the typing dots vanish. Before the meeting, there's the family dinner. Roasted chicken, fake laughter, and the clink of staged normalcy. Marla arrives late, cheeks radiant, eyes weaponized. To Jade, she toasts, who keeps the city humming. It should be flattering. It lands like a warning shot. Theo clears his throat, mentions the showcase. Don't let noise distract us, Marla says, and I know I'm the noise. She passes me a linen napkin that's heavier than cloth. Inside, a cashier's check stub stamped, donor advised. The amount would erase my credit card debt. Consider it appreciation, she murmurs, smiling at my mother across the table. I can't accept gifts, I say, sliding it back. Her smile freezes. Must we be so theatrical? She whispers. A harmless correction saves jobs. I hear my own heartbeat in my teeth. Then let's correct it in public, I say softly. The table quiets, conversation dying mid-syllable. Marla's jaw tightens. I worry about your brother's future, she says, full volume now. Theo looks at me like I've flipped the table. I almost cave. Mrs. Ruiz's words echo. Paper talks. We clear dishes. Marla corners me by the sink, voice syrupy. Say yes, and this all goes away. I stare at the faucet, watching water bead and slide. I turn off the tap and tell her she'll have my answer tomorrow morning. I book a small conference room at the bank where public funds interface with university accounts. I CC a university compliance officer on the invite, along with Attorney Park. I add Theo last, hence trembling. Subject line, clarification meeting, procurement and permitting records. In the body, I write, to avoid confusion, all discussion will be documented. Marla replies instantly, delighted to clarify. The compliance officer writes, we welcome transparency. Theo sends a thumbs up and then, separately, please don't humiliate her. I print 2 copies of everything, leave originals in a locked drawer. Morning arrives like a courtroom. Park nods to me, serene as a metronome. The compliance officer adjusts her glasses. Marla sweeps in with practiced warmth. We're all friends, she says. I begin. There appears to be a discrepancy between the permit timestamp and our office hours. I'd like to note the steps to correct it lawfully. Park slides forward a form for retroactive attestation with penalties for misstatement. Marla's lips thin. I continue. Additionally, multiple advances to vendor 00483 appear linked to an entity sharing Bright Harbor's EIN. Theo's chair creaks. Marla smiles at him, then at me, a private dare. Let's pull up the receipts, I say, opening the binder to the page that has teeth. Theo leans in, eyes moving from the paper to Marla's face in slow motion. On the screen, I project the timeline. September 18th to September 8th edits, the midnight typo, the proton handle echoing Marla's pet phrase. The compliance officer takes notes like a woodpecker. I play a recorded call, Marla telling the ex-assistant to clean the workshop paperwork, voice steady, words surgical. Marla laughs lightly. Out of context, she says. Park raises a hand. We have context, he replies, laying down the notarized statement. I show bank images tying cashier's check redemptions to Lila Caraway's mismatched IDs. The officer asks, who is Ms. Caraway? Marla's mask ripples. A contractor, she says. Passionate, sometimes sloppy. I advance to the slide mapping dummy nonprofits. Arrows connecting grants to vendors to campaign donations washing back into Marla's pet projects. It's not illegal to be generous, she says, too quickly. It is illegal to falsify attestations, Park says gently, and to misrepresent community engagement to obtain permits. Theo's voice cracks. Is my program? Was it? He can't finish. Marla reaches for him. He pulls back. The room tips. You could have asked me quietly, Marla says to me, eyes blazing. I did, I say, and you asked me to lie. Silence lands like a gavel. Then the compliance officer says she's initiating an immediate external audit with law enforcement. The university announces an interim administrative leave for Marla by afternoon. Social media divides into camps, saints and snakes. Theo cancels the showcase, crying in my kitchen, then apologizing for crying. I should have seen it, he says. She paid invoices on time. I hold him until the shaking slows. My supervisor calls me in. You'll be interviewed as a witness. Keep your notes secure. At the cafe, a stranger recognizes me and whispers, thank you, sliding a free muffin across the counter. The next customer hisses, slanderers ruin good people, then leaves without paying. My chest tightens like a fist. Park checks in, precise as ever. Prepare for retaliation narratives, he says. Facts will hold. Meanwhile, Mrs. Ruiz shows up with empanadas and a steely hug. Marla's lawyer sends a letter implying I interfered with internal processes. Park replies with a 6-line masterpiece. Any alteration was refused. All disclosures went to appropriate channels. Theo texts late. I'm angry at her, and at myself. I write back, anger is honest. Don't let it turn you into a liar. Sleep is a thin blanket over a storm. At 3 a.m., a car idles under my window and a shadow lingers too long at my door. I file a police report for the late-night harassment, then install a cheap camera that blinks like a vigilant eyelid. Therapy once a week becomes a new appointment in my calendar, unskippable as a court date. I build routines, morning walks, real breakfast, 15 uninterrupted pages of reading. Theo finds a different funder, smaller checks, clearer rules, and we draft a written agreement that keeps me out of his finances. Conditions in writing, Parks says, approving. The university releases a statement about systemic reform, which means they discovered Marla was the system. I receive a formal commendation from my supervisor privately, so the internet won't froth. Mrs. Ruiz cackles when I show her. Quiet trophies shine longer, she says. I set boundaries like fences. No favors outside policy, no meetings without witnesses, no secrets that smell like sugar. Marla's name still appears on plaques around town, brass refusing to tarnish quickly. That stings, but I'm learning patience, weather wins. On Sundays, I clean my tiny apartment, scrub counters, and feel the holiness of surfaces that only reflect what's really there. I text Theo jokes again, unspooling normalcy thread by careful thread. Then a certified letter arrives addressed to me in Marla's looping, unshakable hand. Inside, a single page. You embarrassed me. You could have asked for the world. I sit at my kitchen table and breathe until the words shrink to ink. Dignity, I've learned, doesn't buy admiration, it buys sleep. Money can masquerade as love so convincingly that you forget love returns the costume after the play. If you're watching this wondering whether to keep the peace or keep the proof, I hope you choose paper. Document dates, copy headers, photograph mailboxes, write names, do it boringly and correctly. Tell at least 2 people who are not dazzled by chandeliers. If you must set a boundary with someone who feeds you, remember this. A full stomach won't quiet a noisy conscience. Theo is rebuilding slowly. His students crowded his tiny studio last week with thrift store flowers. Mrs. Ruiz is teaching me dominoes and how to laugh without apology. I still stamp and scan at the records office, and sometimes I rest my palm on the cool metal of the file cabinets like they're ribs around a heart. There's a hopeful image for you, the truth breathing, even when rooms go dark.